Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Sharpen Podcast brought to you by Acumen Growth Community for business owners and CEOs who are looking to grow and get to the next level, increasing that top line, optimizing that bottom line, and enriching your storyline. I'm your host, Dan Cooper, and my guest today is Jon Schram. He's a multiple exit CEO, 3 times, in fact, with the same company, which is unique. Is in the managed services industry, and for the last 3 years, an Acumen Growth Catalyst, which is our fancy word for leader or facilitator who runs a team here in Kansas City. Today, we're going to talk about the importance of brand. And if you're watching the video, you see he's wearing purple. That becomes important here in a minute. And what he learned through that, because the company was the Purple Guys. And then his experience selling the company to 3 different types of buyers and staying on for the journey each time, which is always a fascinating thing. So, Jon, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Excited about it.
Right on. Good to have you. Before we do the deep dive, give us the high level of your career. How did you get to here?
Getting to here was a lot of fun. I refer to myself as an unintentional serial entrepreneur. Had 3 startups from scratch. The business side of all those was phenomenal. The partnership side of the first 2, not so much. So longer story in there, but 2 really fun, better told over wine stories of what not to do when picking partners.
Yes.
But the business stuff was fantastic, and as you alluded to, the last one was called the Purple Guys. That was my 20-year run in the IT managed services business. A lot of fun, learned a lot, had a lot of fun with it, and did have 3 exits from the same business. So that's something I highly recommend if you get a chance to do it. Sell this, be involved in the sale of your company 3 times. It's a good thing.
All right. So there's uniqueness in both of these stories. So let's start with the color purple first. So the Purple Guys had a unique brand. There was not only color, but also characters and just kind of an attitude. In fact, your wardrobe, as we see today, was entirely purple for a pretty long duration.
Yes.
So what's the story behind the brand, and how did that become so important within the company?
So the evolution of the Purple Guys brand. So I said I was a serial entrepreneur. My second company actually had purple as its logo, but we didn't really use it for anything other than we had pens that wrote with purple ink. So when I started my third company, I'm like, hey, I want those purple pens to stick around. So the only thing I wanted was a logo that was going to be in purple, so I'd keep my purple pens. So we had a different name for the company. It's actually called Versant, which no one could pronounce or spell. Didn't realize it at the time when we were naming it. But we did use purple, and kind of on a whim one day, and this was again IT services world 20 plus years ago when we started the company. We had to do most of what we did on site. So we bought everybody apparel that they could wear that had the company logo on it. We had a whole bunch of different colors. And one day we were at a meeting and everybody had a different colored shirt. My wife, who's Jill, who started the business with me, happened to be in that meeting. And we left the meeting. She's like, this is silly. We have way too many colors with our logo on it. We need to standardize on something. How about we just go with the corporate color? So we did. We took all the shirts back, got everybody purple shirts, which was a little unique back 20 plus years ago for a bunch of guys to show up wearing purple. But our customers started calling us, hey, the Purple Guys are here. And, I'm slow, but I'm not that slow. They could remember purple. Purple was easy to pronounce. They could spell it. And that was how the Purple Guys brand was born. So paying attention to your customers, whatever they're calling you, hopefully it's not a 4-letter word. But using that in your marketing, listen. And purple was very good to us over the years. We did a lot of really fun stuff with purple.
Yeah, so give some of the highlights, because once you have this core brand thing, the evolution starts. So how did
Yes.
that evolve? I mean, 20 years is it's a
Mhm.
long time.
Yes. My youngest daughter was born, I think she was 1 when I started wearing purple. And then my final exit happened when she was, I think 16. So it was a really long run with purple. And when I stopped wearing purple, I've actually mixed a little bit other than purple into my wardrobe, but I had to get this on for the interview today.
Yeah.
She's like, Dad, this is really weird. Everything you wear, it doesn't matter what color it actually is. My brain's turning up purple. So I lived the brand. So back to the branding. For us, the IT support, computer support, managed services space, pretty crowded. At least in the Kansas City market, there was probably 300 or so companies that did what we did, and they varied in size from 2 people to maybe 10 or 15. We had one of the bigger companies, but that business, like a lot of small businesses, it's a kind of spur of the moment, pain driven decision to switch who's taking care of your computers. So you want to be top of mind when someone's in pain and they remember you. So we, every way we could, we associated Purple with computer support. So if I could have a quick conversation with you at a business meeting, at a lunch, just in passing, hey, what do you do? I have a company called the Purple Guys. Hey, what do you do? We do IT support, computer support. So next time you get an issue, just remember Purple and computers and call us. That quick connection, very simple, very straightforward, to the point. Still didn't really tell you what we did other than we dealt with computers. But next time you have pain, you remember the color purple because it's something you already know. Remember computers. And if you Googled Purple computer support, we were the only thing that came up. So we got our hat in the ring with the Purple. And we use Purple in everything from definitely our uniforms forms were purple. So everybody knew that, somebody that came in a not purple shirt and claimed to be from the Purple Guys, they could throw them out because they're supposed to wear purple. And we got associated with other brands that did purple. So I don't know if you remember the purple pill or the purple mattress that's out there now. I can't remember what the purple pill was for. I think it was for heartburn. But anyway, we had some fun with that. People were like, hey, do you guys have a pharmaceutical branch as well? I'm like, no, we just stay with computers. But it was a really fun brand. We also did mailings. So again, the small business world, B2B. Our best mailing we ever came up with was a pen that wrote with purple ink, but then we also put a grape shaped eraser. So it was shaped like a bunch of grapes, went on top of the pen, and it smelled like grape hubba bubba. And one of them was very scented. When we did a mailing of those and we were packing 100 or so, it's actually toxic. It was awful. And then I would have them in my trunk, driving them to the post office, and my car would smell like purple or like grapes for a week until it aired out. But it was great because you stick that in an envelope, Purple Guys, some little card, whatever the thing was, and we would send grape job cards to people. So if they appeared on a 25 under 25 or a 40 under 40 list or some award recognition, we would mail out a grape job card with that pen and the eraser. And we hit a color, we hit a scent, and I would have people months later say, "You're the one that sent me that smelly pencil. My staff kept hiding it in my office." So it kind of took on its own thing. We had a lot of fun with Purple and branding.
Oh, people always ask the ROI of brand, and it's one of the hardest things to quantify out in the space.
Yeah.
How would you, after the fact now, put value to brand?
Uh, the way I looked at branding, and I'm an engineer, so I come across sometimes like I'm a sales guy. I'm not. I don't really like big social gatherings or social selling settings. I really don't like selling in general. Um, but I love marketing. Marketing at its core is the most measurable thing possible, and branding is part of that. So a lot of companies think, hey, I got a brand, and really you got a name and a logo. That's not a brand. Um, if you're recognizable 6 months later, to me, that's a brand. It's something that sticks in your head, but it's got to be simple. It's got to be really easy to remember, and something that somebody can tell their friend about very quickly. So again, we stumbled on it. Our customers named it. I happen to recognize that and run with it. But the ROI of the brand, we used Google AdWords to do a lot of our marketing. If they already knew Purple and computers, we already hit it out of the park. But
Yeah.
the IT support Kansas City, if somebody Googled that, I wanted to be top of mind. And it's just polling your customers. So if you're spending money on something like Google AdWords, you want to know, are you getting a return on that? So Google will sort of tell you. but you also, every time a customer calls in or a potential prospect calls in, where'd you find us? And so just tracking that info and being diligent about it will tell you, hey, I found you on the web. And for me, I didn't really care if it was an organic search or a paid search. I wanted all of my found you on the web things. And then you follow those through and which of those actually rang the cash register. And then you have a dollar amount versus your spend, and you can actually calculate the ROI. I would say any marketing where you can't and track it to the dollar amount versus your spend is not really marketing. That's just lighting money on fire and hoping someone notices the flame and comes over to see what's going on. That is what a lot of people do with marketing. But you've got to be able to measure it to actually call it marketing.
Okay, so if there's a business owner sitting there and they have a Versant style brand and they've been mulling this thing over, what advice would you give in this if I'm thinking about this, I want to go to that, or I want to amp up the one that I currently have.
Well, and I tiptoed softly, although I'm a rabid Purple fan at the moment. When I presented hey, do we want to become Purple guys? It sounded kind of silly. I mean, hey, IT is a serious subject, and this is a big deal to companies, and we got to do this right. Do we really want to be the Purple guys? I very quickly realized we wanted to be the Purple guys. But we were Versant, a Purple guys company for a little while. And then we were the Purple guys, a Versant company for a long while, which actually, we were a small company. I think when we first started, we were 12 people. And it looked like we were a conglomerate that was national just because of the way we named the company, a something company. So transitioning your brand, focusing your brand, again, you want to do it on purpose. So for us, it was, we tiptoed into it, but it took us about a year to go from Versant, a Purple guys company, to the Purple guys, a Versant company, and then just drop the Versant altogether because it never really made any difference at the start anyway. We did it slowly. We didn't, want to seem like we went out of business and we're under new ownership. So, you want to communicate that to the marketplace. So we did, and you just be intentional about what you're doing to transition. But if your brand is not memorable, if it's hard to pronounce, and again, there's a lot of made up company names, and actually Versant was a made up name, Versent, which is a made up word. Which I found out after we started using that name, that 80% of the people that would read it would pronounce it Versant, as though we were some fine French company. Like, where did that come from? But so we dropped it because it was hard and it made your brain work. And that's the thing. If the more you make people have to think, use brain power on what did you just say and how do you spell that? Like, they're already gone. Like, you get almost no time. So simple is better. Easy is better, clear communication around it. All of that is better. If that's what you're moving toward in kind of a brand evolution, would highly encourage it.
Okay, it's good stuff. Let's flip the script. So one time is usually how everybody wins, right? And the joke even is like, how often do you get to sell your company? Once. So to take a second bite of the apple is even like a lesser, to do it 3 times is like, okay, so what?
Well, to start,
Yeah.
we had partners in and out of the business. So again, we maintained, and this is part of the other story. Maybe we'll do a second podcast on how not to pick partners. But when we started what became the Purple guys, we maintained majority ownership for, I guess it was the first 17 years, but had partners come and go, still on speaking terms with all of those partners. And, the company grew. And at the time, it was just my wife and I owned the business, and we were not looking to sell. But this is one of those kind of God things that it's a friend. Actually, it was a friends, employees, husbands, sisters, ex-boss was looking to buy a company. That was the connection.
I'm not going to map that out. I'm just going to trust you.
Yeah. So it's like that weird, like bizarre, very far off connection. They happened to be in St. Louis. We were in Kansas City. We're like, it never hurts to have a conversation. Let's go. So Jill and I flew out to St. Louis, sat down with him, really, really liked him. He had been in the outsourced logistics business and had sold his company and wanted to kind of get back into the B2B kind of service space, loved it. His CFO was going to come along with the deal. So we went out with them and their wives, kind of got to know them on a personal level. They just seemed like great people. And we're like, maybe. And so he made an offer and we're like, maybe. He upped the offer. We're like, maybe. He upped the offer again. We're like, all right, this is serious. We're like, all right, if it's here, then kind of this is a no-brainer, but it's emotional. You start a business and you're like, because they wanted to buy 80% of the company. So we were going to be essentially handing the keys over. And the story that was being told to me by the new owner slash purchaser was, I just want to put money in this, pour gasoline on it, love your brand, love what you're doing. You're going to keep running it. Now, my Acumen group that I happened to be in at the time was like, there's no way he's going to write that big a check and you're going to keep running it. Like 0% chance that's going to happen. You're probably going to hate this guy inside of 6 months. And so we hemmed and hawed again. And then the number, it really just kept getting bigger in our minds. And it's like, all right, this is one of those, pray a lot about it, figure out what it is. It felt right. So we did that deal. We sold 80% of the company. His CFO came along and it was freaking awesome. Had I not brought him over from St. Louis to introduce him to my staff, they wouldn't even known a transaction happened. And kind of the really fun part about that transaction was up to that point, we were Versant Group LLC doing business as the Purple Guys. We made a new entity with that transaction called the Purple Guys. So we actually became the Purple Guys with that transaction, which was super fun because, you want to communicate to your customers like, hey, we just did a rebranding. We're now the Purple Guys. You're going to see it, the official Purple Guys LLC on the invoices. So it was utterly seamless in the marketplace. And he really was completely hands off. His only insistence was we start a St. Louis office, which I wish I could have convinced him to start it anywhere else. That's a whole other different story, but
That's that also.
yeah. If you're in Kansas City and St. Louis, that's a rough hill to climb.
Yes.
But we grew, we more than doubled the business in a 4-year period. It was super fun, lots of fast growth. So he did pour gasoline on it. And then, we crossed that magical, once you get over $1 million in EBITDA and you're on some lists and people are out there, you start getting unsolicited bids. We got a lot of those. And we started to entertain a few of them. And we wound up getting in a bidding war. And again, so I'd given up the keys. I turned over 80% of the business. I'm running it, but I'm not the sole decision maker. And phenomenal partners. So his thing was, 4 to 5 year investment and then exit, which that's what he went in with. And I was not going to mess that up. So we had a lot of bidders, narrowed it down to two different private equity groups. And when you get two people competing and they really like what they see, the numbers keep going up. And again, that went up and up and up and up and up. And like, all right, we have a winner. So that is sale number 2. I own 20% of the entity. And I got paid out 20%, almost as much as the first time. So that's pretty fun when you grow and build. Oh. Transaction number 2 is almost as big as transaction number 1. And then I stayed on with the new group. And this was traditional private equity. So a little bit different animal. Again, probably its own separate podcast, but we reinvested with the private equity group. So we reinvested, basically had 3% equity at that point. And I stayed on in the marketing capacity. So that was actually a super fun ride for about 6 months. I stayed almost 2 years, which was about 1.5 years, probably too long. But it was still super fun. Company grew. They were bolting on other companies. I got to rebrand businesses as the Purple Guys. So they took our brand and took it essentially national, which was super fun. So I rebranded 9 offices, put the marketing plans in place, put the Google AdWords stuff in place. It was a fun experience to have. And then it was time for me to bow out. So I bowed out before the private equity did its final transaction. Um, but then they did, because again, that's private equity. They stay in 3 to 5 years. So when they sold, again, our 3% had grown, and it wasn't quite as big as the first two transactions, but it was pretty close. So that's kind of how we got to three sales in the same company. And I highly recommend it. Not everybody gets the amazing, awesome business partner that I got that first time around. That usually does not happen. Actually, I've yet to hear anybody else have it happen. But it was super fun.
So that is super unique, and you're right. We should have another one where we talk about, the joke is what ship always sinks, and it's a partnership. So
Oh,
I'm
yes.
sure you have lots of things around that. So what is your learning through those? Because those are three distinct types of sales, right?
Yeah.
Um, what did you learn about those? Well, let's back up. How
Yeah.
was it giving up your baby? Because that's the
Oh, it
biggest
was
in each
so
one of them.
emotional.
It was like a little less and a little less, but it was
Yeah.
they took a little more from
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
How was that part? Because that's hard.
The first one, the emotions going into it, when I sold 80%, it was an emotional deal. But 6 months later, there was no I was still running it. It was still my baby. Which was weird because I'd had all this. Oh, I'm turning the control over, and then wait a minute, I did and I didn't. Basically, I turned the control of are we going to sell over to somebody else, but the day to day running the business. So the emotional hit didn't really happen until that second sale to the private equity group. That was There's no control. That's a total shift. You have a different role. Somebody else is driving the bus. That was emotional and really hard. That's why I said I probably stayed longer than I should have,
Mm.
because it's tough. It is very much. It's probably not as emotional as selling a child, but it's close. Especially something you've been doing. I mean, for me, it was almost a 20-year run when that happened. Um, and 20 years of doing the same thing. And again, I was the purple guy. I wore purple on vacation. So coming down to Florida, which is where I live now, uh, I had purple swimsuits that I would wear at the beach. So I went probably a little overboard with the branding, but that was it was who I was. It was part of my very much part of my identity. So there's a lot of emotion wrapped up in that. So and it
Did
took a
you
while
work
to
through that? Because
decompress
that's
for me.
not a one day I'm fine, the next
Oh
day.
no, no, actually,
Like,
I actually wrote an
what was your
obituary.
process?
Yeah, I actually wrote an obituary, for the Purple Guys as part of my process of saying goodbye, which was kind of makes me tear up right now. It was very emotional. It really was saying goodbye to kind of that entire chapter of my life. So
Yeah, definitely. I think if there's one thing that every entrepreneur eventually goes through is this, um, am I what I do? Is this place? And no matter how hard we try, you don't know until you know,
yeah,
at the end. You really don't know
totally.
until you know. But it's good to think about. It's good to think about. The
Yes.
obituary is an interesting thing. How long was that? Just curious. Like, was that an homage? Was that like 10 or 12 pages, or was that just what did you do?
I think it was about 4 pages, and kind of the how that came about. I was sitting actually, my pastor had come down to hang out over spring break at our beach house. And I was telling him all the emotions I was having, and he's like, Easter's coming up, and he's like, this is kind of like a resurrection, like you're being reborn, but it's also an obituary. Maybe you want to look at it from that perspective. I'm like, well, that's a fantastic idea. So that was where the whole obituary and saying goodbye and what's next kind of came up, and it was uh, it was an awesome process to go through and put it on paper. And then I gave it to my wife, and she read it, and she cried, and there was a lot of tears. But again, it's tough to have, oh, poor me, I sold my business 3 times and then I got emotional about it. It turned out really, really well. Very, very blessed on the back side of all of this stuff. But still really an emotional process.
So let's do the same thing. I'm a business owner. I'm getting unsolicited offers. How do I start thinking through this? And just some top line advice that you would give me as I
Uh,
start.
Yeah. So top line advice on the emotional personal side. If you're the founder, I think it's a lot more emotional. If you bought a business and you're selling it, it's probably still emotional, but it's probably more of a transaction. So I'm speaking to the founder folks that are out there. Think about what's next. I mean, for me, part of the what was next is, hey, I'm gonna shift sides of the table at Acumen and become a coach, which gave me something to look forward to and part of that transition. Um, but the emotional side of this, give yourself the time and the permission to deal with it and expect it to be emotional. I mean, yes, it's money, it's a transaction, there's tons of people and personalities involved. Um, but it's again, if you've done it for any length of time, that's a huge part of your life and your personality and your identity that's going to change literally overnight when that check hits the bank account. So yes,
Yep.
it's a huge celebration, awesome, and it's like, wow, now what? It hits way harder than you're going to expect. So just be prepared for that and spend some time thinking about kind of that what's next before you do it.
One of those practical things. A lot of times we hear people putting together advisors a little later than they thought they should. So, what did your deal team look like, especially in that first or second transaction? Like, who came alongside you to help you think through all this?
Yeah. First transaction, uh, personal friend who's a business attorney named Sheila Seck. She operates out of Kansas City. Awesome. But we'd known her forever. Our kids were in second grade when they met. Uh, Her youngest, our oldest. And so we'd known Sheila forever. So she was our advisor. And through that first transaction, never would have got it done without her. So no way I could self administer that process at all. Second transaction, when we sold to private equity, part of the experience that the CFO brought to the table, he had bought as part of a roll up in his past life. So he was very familiar with the M&A world. So he was really our internal advisor. We still had outside legal, but he really ran the process. So we ran our own process, which I normally would not recommend unless you've got the expertise in house. He happened to have the expertise. So that was, and it also, it's a fun process when you have all of your ducks in a row. It was a really clean business, very clean financials. We had the bidding war happen. That was just kind of super fun because like we're valued here, we're valued here, we're valued here, we're valued, they're all matching numbers. And we're like, all right, you're a winner. And then you get your LOI, and for us, the LOI was exactly what we decided. That's great if we do that. That everybody's going to be happy, and just be prepared for pushback post LOI, and when they do their due diligence, they will try to do fun things with numbers to come up with a rationale to, we offered here, but it's really here. We're like, no, it's not really here. Everything we said is true. It needs to stay here. Then they came back at least 3 times to, it needs to be here. We're like, no, it needs to be here. And we didn't need to sell to them at the end of the day. So, and that was actually a kind of an entertaining process because more sophisticated financial stuff happening. And they'd come back with, well, here's why. I'm like, yeah, I can see you trying to make that point, but no, we said this number and this is the number. And it wound up being that was the number, and we did the deal. So because we had other alternatives. I mean, we had a lot of people knocking on our door, and at the end of the day, we didn't have to sell. Very profitable business. Um, and if I was the one making the decision, I probably would have blown that deal up. But I wasn't. So because it was getting very emotional for me at that point. I'm like, wow, this is actually real. And they might not take the name forward and the brand. And that was a whole big part of the stuff in my head. So yeah, again, if I was the one trying to drive that process, 99% chance I'd have blown it up.
Okay, so he gave a lot of advice without actually saying the specific thing. So I think if there's a couple of things to take out of that
Yeah.
experience is one, make sure you know your stuff, you have everything clean, your financials. So there are plenty of advisors out there that can help get you to this point. The key is to do it early. 3 to 5 years is usually what it takes to get to that point. So when in doubt, plant the tree today if you want to sell 5 years from now, because not everybody can in 90 days get clean financials and
Yes.
be in a position that it's okay not to sell. So that's another great tip is
Yeah.
if you can figure out where you're in charge of your sale, whether you do or don't, there's power in that. And that's a hard place to get to. You got to work at it. And congratulations, man. You got
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. One last thing you just made me think of is
Yeah.
through that transaction and that process, it can be an incredible distraction from running your business.
Oh yeah.
So this is back to having a business and being prepared. While we were going through the transaction, our numbers, it was a distraction for me. It was a distraction for my CFO, but the core business kept right on chugging. And actually, our numbers kept getting better. So, again, our bargaining position, if you will, they're like, hey, we want to, like, how about no? Or if you really want to, let's just redo the numbers again because they're better. And we're probably going to ask for a bigger number this time. So it will be a distraction. So be prepared for that. And it's important to make sure the business stays stable through that process.
More you can be working on the company and not in the
Yes.
company. If you get the better it
Yes,
goes, right? Yeah.
totally.
Okay, bonus question. How are you being sharpened, challenged, and inspired right now? What's got your goat?
Well, I am again unintentional serial entrepreneur. So what my challenge is right now is I love running my Acumen group. So it's super fun to have all those business conversations on a regular basis and to herding cats on a regular basis, getting the group together. That's super fun. But I'm actually kicking the tires on a new business, and we're about set to launch something down here in the Panhandle of Florida called Walk Your Plans. It is life-size blueprints you can walk through prior to building. So, home builders, uh, office space builders, landscape architects. That's our customer base. So it's a super fun concept. It's a licensed concept. So that's what's kind of got my juices flowing at the moment. Kind of scratching the entrepreneurial itch.
Cool. Very cool. Uh, okay. Where can our listeners find out more about you and this new thing that you might be doing besides Acumen?
LinkedIn's best place to find me. Just Jon Schram, and John is spelled Jon. So I think it's actually on the screen. Yes. I'm used to it being misspelled, but just look me up, hit me up on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to reach out. And then through Acumen, the email john.schram@acumenimpact.com, still probably the best email to get to me. But love to talk business. Happy to help in any way I can. Kind of whatever stage you're in. I love the business of business.
A good segue. If you're interested in becoming a member of Acumen, go to acumenimpact.com. If you don't email John directly, click on the apply button in that upper right corner. And if you'd like to just learn more, there's a ton of great content under the resources tab up there. Jon Schram, thanks for wearing purple today. Thanks for sharing all the stuffs. And now we have 4 more topics for podcasts in the future based upon all the other stuff we had today. Thanks, man.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. Peace.